Before 1999, if you needed a dentist in Vietnam, you'd likely end up in a crowded public hospital or someone's converted living room. Then came along Dr. Vo Van Tu Hien, who changed the game. He opened up Vietnam's first private multi-chair dental clinic, Nha Khoa 2000, bringing modern dentistry to the people, right when the country needed it most. Today, that legacy lives on with Premier Dental. Founded by Dr. Hien in 2004 and now led by his daughter Annie Vo and her US-trained husband, Dr. Albert Viet Lee. They're blending global standards with Vietnamese care, and not just for fillings and cleanings. Premier Dental focuses on areas Vietnam urgently needs, like gum disease treatment and kids' dental health. And they're doing it with advanced tech, bilingual support, and a no-nonsense ethical approach to care. If you want dental care you can trust from a team who's modernized it over 2 decades, visit premierdental.vn or just Google Premier Dental Vietnam. They've been pioneering dentistry here since the 90s and they're only getting better.
So for a long time, it took me a long time to really understand what it means to be Asian. I grew up in a very hard place, so we had to survive a lot. So I kind of gave up being Vietnamese or Asian, and I adopted into like hip-hop culture. The Vietnamese people over there, I have never had a good experience with them. Yeah, so that's why it made me push my Vietnamese roots away. Trauma brings us closer together, that longing, that connection. So a lot of us VQs who are coming back here, we all have that. We all want to connect.
Welcome to another episode of Discover Vietnam, a Vietnam podcast, our new name, with me, your host, Neil Mackay. I first came to Vietnam in 2015 for a vacation, absolutely fell in love with the place, came back in 2016 for just 6 weeks, and 9 years later, I'm still here because like many people, this country just gets you. I started this podcast in 2019 one day because I was bored and I loved podcasts and I wanted to get to know more about people that are connected to Vietnam. We are now in the top 5% of podcasts worldwide and we have over 100,000 downloads. So thank you very much for making that possible and tuning into this episode. Now today, my guest is an actor, a model and a dancer all the way from LA, but has been living in Saigon for 2 years now. He's Viet Kieu, and we're going to be talking today about what it's like to fit in as a Viet Kieu in Vietnam, because I know through my many conversations on this show, it has its own unique challenges. We're also going to talk about the film industry here in Vietnam compared to the US, and why did he make that decision to move all the way from LA to Vietnam. My guest today is Devin Hong. Devin, thank you so much for joining me on Discover Vietnam.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So you're a model, actor, and dancer. I've got to share with you my one acting story. I'm not an actor. I'm barely a podcaster. But there's this thing in Vietnam. So we met just a couple of days ago, and we met with your, would you call him an agent? Or what would you call him?
Yeah, he's like my agent.
He's an agent,
also a
right?
friend.
A friend and an agent. When I told him about this, he was like right away. He was like, yep, 100%. Have you seen it that there's often a shout out on expat groups that they're looking for a very specific type of person for a very specific role?
Yeah, I've seen some of those.
What do you think I'm talking about?
I guess what I'm guessing is like tall white man for any type of European looking.
Age group? What age group? And what kind of role would they want the person to play?
Usually a dad, a teacher, a tourist.
Well, the one that comes up quite often is a doctor. Is very often, and normally someone in their kind of 40s, things like this. So I responded to one of those ads a couple of years ago. It was like, we're looking for, a white guy, always of a certain age group, and nearly always to play a doctor. So I responded, and sure enough, I was like a scientist for a milk commercial, and it was a fun experience. It was crazy, I go along and did a casting, like a interview, I guess you call it. And they put a white jacket on me. They get me to say a line and completely botched it. But somehow they were like, yep, come back tomorrow. I don't understand how these things happen so quickly as well. It's like, come now, come tomorrow. We're going to get started. So I went along. I obviously looked too young. So they covered me in makeup, put grey hair on me, sprayed grey hair on me, made me have some wrinkles and things like this. So I was there for half the day, just getting ready, getting fitted. And you put on all these clothes that they have as a non-actor, never been in this world. It's a weird experience. You just show up. They're like, yep, go in that room. I just sit down. They don't tell you what's happening. They do your makeup. Next minute, someone's bringing clothes over, shoes, everything, like all of that. Before you even get to the set, then I get brought on set. And I had one line. It was for a powdered milk for a baby commercial. And I'm not going to lie, there was a bit of my morals were like, is this true? I don't know. It's like, it's this milk formula and it does this to your brain and helps with child development and blah, blah, blah. And I have to say this line. And the whole time I'm thinking, this could be like baking powder that's in this thing that we're selling. I don't know. But I had to keep doing this line. And the funniest thing about it was that they said to me that my hands had to be more natural. And I was like, I have no clue what that means. I don't know what natural hands look like. And the more they kept telling me like instructions, like make your hands more natural, I was like, I now have forgotten the one line that I have to remember. And then there's my thumbs were up too high, so I had to bring my thumbs in and blah, blah, blah. And then eventually, a month later, I saw the commercial got aired. They changed my voice, of course, for some American voice. And I was in this commercial, literally blink and you miss it. It was about a second. And I saw it had about 7 million views. I was like, that's pretty cool. So that's my one acting experience. Do you relate to any of that?
Yeah, when I first started, when I did my first commercial, I was very nervous. Of course, they came in and did the whole makeup thing as well, right? But like in Asia, they just love to put a lot on you, Because, it's like they want to make you look young and bright and white.
So mine was the opposite. I was caked because I'm so white and so pale. I'm like translucent. I'm so pale. They caked me. I'll show you the picture afterwards. They caked me in dark makeup. Like I was so brown. I sent a selfie to my wife. I was like, look at the state of me right now. But it made sense because they have the bright white lights. So I guess if they hadn't, because in the video I looked normal, whatever normal is, but I didn't look dark and I didn't look pale. And I was like, if they hadn't put that dark makeup on me and then these bright white lights, I probably literally would have looked like Casper the Ghost.
It just looks like that for us Asians. I don't know. Like, this is what I've noticed in Asia, is everyone kind of glorifies the really pale look.
Weird. And we're the opposite.
Yeah. Like in America, we want to have like a natural look, right? Sure, like if there's imperfections, you want to cover that, or if that role is a little bit younger, X, Y, and Z, right? But for some reason, here, they just want you to look like you just got out of like a ghost movie or something like that. You just look so white.
That is a consistent thing with acting here and TV commercials.
I think everyone's different, right? Like depending on what the role is. Like obviously, if you pay like a Southerner and you're in the farm and stuff like that, right? Then they're not trying to make you look like you're some prince from the moon or something like that, right? But like if you're doing a commercial and you're kind of dark, I guess they kind of want to make you look more fair, I guess. Fair is the right word.
Now you've got me thinking about it, and I think about all these commercials I see. Yeah, they're always really, really pale.
Like all of our lines are gone, right? Like you don't see nothing. There's no, age, little wrinkle marks, anything. It's just.
Well, if you are watching this, we're going to redo our faces afterwards and make us look perfect. There'll be no lines or anything.
So make sure you make us look good.
Yeah. No, I'm lying. We're going to look like
vampires, okay?
So what was it like then growing up in LA, having not just a Vietnamese background, you're Chinese and Korean, was it you told me?
Yeah, so I'm mostly Vietnamese. I'm mixed with Chinese and a little bit of other things too. My grandpa's side on my dad is part Korean, but I'm mostly Vietnamese Chinese. And originally I grew up in San Jose, California, and then moved to LA for work. So growing up, it's very different, right? So I was originally born in Vietnam.
Oh, you were born here?
Yes, I was born in Phu Nhung, which is kind of like the middle of Ho Chi Minh City. Then as I was growing up, learning about Vietnamese culture, we had to leave from the war and all that stuff. So me trying to learn how to be Vietnamese and then flying all the way to America, and now I have to be American, which no one knows what that is, right? Because we're trying to assimilate, we're trying to work, we're trying to build something there. So for a long time, it took me a long time to really understand what it means to be Asian. And I grew up in a very hard place. So there's a lot of fights, a lot of things going on. So we had to survive a lot. So I kind of gave up being Vietnamese or Asian. And I adopted into I guess more like hip hop culture. That's when I became a dancer. And I gave me more of that American culture and personality. And then 20 years later, which is now, it's my first time coming back to Vietnam. And I was like, oh my God, this is Vietnam? This is where I was born? It's nothing like what I've seen on TV. It's nothing like what my parents have said. And it was just a total culture shock for me.
How old were you when you moved to the US?
So I was about 3 years old.
Yeah. So you don't remember much of Vietnam before then?
It's weird, but I do remember little things. I remember that I was playing outside, and I see like people eating and like cooking food, around the street. I always see little dogs. I see the red stools, like, little things like that, right? Little glimpse of the cultures that I remember when I was young. But then after that, like nothing else. Yeah.
So when you're growing up in California, what were some of the stereotypes that people perceived of you and your family? If you're looking for a reason to finally book that trip to Vietnam and you're looking for world-class dental care, then go to Premier Dental in Ho Chi Minh City. You can actually save up to 70% compared to Western prices, and believe me, you will not be compromising on quality. This isn't a back alley budget dentistry. It's ethical, internationally trained professionals using cutting-edge tech in a state-of-the-art clinic. Founded by Vietnam's dental pioneer Dr. Vo Van Tu Hien, and now led by his US-trained son-in-law, Premier Dental combines global standards with Vietnamese hospitality. Come for the crown and stay for the coffee, culture, and cocktails. Visit premierdental.vn to book your appointment and start your dental vacation.
Well, first of all, they didn't even really know what kind of Asian are you, Like, they're like, you're Asian, you're probably Chinese.
I'm laughing because literally just had this conversation with a previous guest as well, that she went over to the US and it's a similar thing. They're just like...
Yeah. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's ignorance. Maybe people just don't care, or they don't want to care, right? But you're Asian. You're either the light-skinned Asians, which are the Koreans, the Japanese, the Chinese, or you're the darker Asians, right? The Southeast Asians, whether you're either the Filipinos, the Cambodians, the Vietnamese. But that's it. The dark Asian and the white Asian, right?
I've never heard it described like that, but yeah, that makes complete sense.
So yeah, so they thought I was Chinese and they thought I was Filipino, depending on how dark I was, So like even when I was going through roles in LA, they're like, we're looking for an Asian guy. That's it.
Yeah.
And my agent will be like, oh, yeah, here, go audition
I've
for
got
this.
the perfect role for you. And you're like...
Yeah, what are you looking for? And then I don't know why I see all this Korean dialogue. I'm like, oh, I can't speak Korean. Not like that. But then they're like, it's okay, just go. Just they don't care, they don't know. And I was like, and when you first start, right? So it's like, all right, I'll do my best, I'll try. You get into the role, but you're like, all right, but is this culture appropriation? Whatever, let's do it. But as you keep going, you realize, okay, like that's not really me. That's not the role that I can really encompass, right? And of course, being Asian American in the States, what does that mean? Like to me, I guess I don't want to be like so blunt, but I feel like Americans, we have our own culture, but they're all like different from everyone else, right? Like Europeans, when they came to America, now they're adopted American culture. They're not European, British, or anything like that. Same with Asians. Does that mean that we kind of lost our culture and we just adopted a new culture? So it was hard, right? Because like all of us Asian Americans were kind of loud, I guess. We're a little bit expressive, we're creative, we're independent, right? We had to struggle, we had to fight for whatever we have. And that's how we grew up, right? So we're like that. So even coming back here, right, I was like, oh my God, Vietnamese people here are so nice. Because all the Vietnamese people, or all the Asians I met over there, they were all like gangster. They're all like, yo, what did you say to me? Like that's what I'm used to, right? All the time. When I come here, everyone's like, oh, hello. Oh my God, welcome back. Like, you're so nice. How can I help you? And I was like, oh my God, like, this is Asian culture, right? But yes, so it was hard to really solidify my identity as Asian or even Vietnamese in California. Because a lot of us, we were we weren't really, I guess, like nice kids. We grew up kind of hard. So a lot of my friends who are Vietnamese or Asian, they were all rough. So I grew up like that, right? So that adopted into like hip hop culture and dance culture. So, we adopted that. And then coming back here, it's like, oh my God, we're so different. And we might look the same too, right? Like a lot of Vietnamese people saying, yeah, like you're Vietnamese, but you don't really have our way of doing things or our behavior, the way of talking. It's like you're wearing our face, but you're not really us. And that's probably something that's been very hard for me navigating back here in Vietnam.
This is what I've heard before. It's really, really difficult coming back. And it's been so inspiring and intriguing hearing the stories of so many VQs who have grown up in the US, very similar left post-war. The parents don't understand why they want to come back to this country because they're going to get locked up or it's dangerous or it's unsafe. And then the children come back and they're like, this place is amazing and the people are lovely. So as a VQ, then what are some of the daily struggles that you face here?
I faced so many. When I first got here, my Vietnamese was not good at all. I think like we've learned to say little things like, oh, food, right? Hello, bye-bye, like all that stuff like that. But to actually have a complex conversation, it was very difficult. So that was one thing. The second thing was how to be less forward. I think maybe maybe just me though, because I'm a very forward person. If I'm like, hey, what you just did, I don't like that. Vietnamese people, they don't really do that. They kind of just avoid it, right? But for me, or at least my friends too, when we say some things like that, they're like, wow, that guy's rude.
Can you give me a specific example that you remember of that? Because I'm trying to picture what would that situation be?
I guess like dating, for example, right? Like you would ask this girl to get dinner, like, hey, by the way, I made reservations, be here at 7 o'clock. I'm going to lose money if we're not going to be there on time. They're going to cut a reservation, all that stuff like that, right? So, they're like, okay. Then 7:45 happens and you're there and you're like kind of pissed, right? Because you've already told them. But then they're like, oh my God, traffic or something happened, or I got done up for you. And then you're just like, oh, okay, cool. But please next time, let's not do that again. And then they go, oh, why you're so mean to me? Why did you say that? So things like that, or even like, business in terms of whatever you want to say. Like, oh, hey, let's collab on this. And I go, okay, but what's in it for me? And, what are the business deals? And like, no. We'll talk about it another time. Let's just drink. Oh, yeah, we'll figure it out. Don't worry. It's like, no. I need to know. Like, I don't want to waste anyone's time. Right. Just like our previous encounter. Right. And some people might find that rude. Right. But I guess in the West, it's like we don't want to beat around the bush when it comes to numbers or business or even feelings. Right. Or how we want to put ourselves out there. But I've realized in Vietnam, you have to be a little bit, I guess, beat around the bush. You can't just say everything so forward, right? It's rude. Yeah, so that's another thing I noticed.
Yeah.
Another struggle, let's see. I think work has been hard. After being a performing artist for a long time, I took a designer job as a user interface designer back home. And I've done that for a couple of years. So I come here, so I was like, okay, maybe it's time to get back to work. And I'll look for jobs, right? And then all these job applications, stuff like that, they have a very different way of doing things. Where there, it's like, yeah, here are my skills. Here's this and that. But here, it's about relationships. It's about, hey, yeah, I know this guy. Get him a job, right? But even with that, like, that's just the first level of that, right? The second part is like, when you get there, you realize there's a hierarchical chain that you have to cater to. Because in the West, I guess it's like you do your job, you talk to your manager, everything's good, cool, we move on. Over here, it's like, no. You're going to do my work, your work, and you're going to shut up. You're going to keep going. Oh, it's time for you to go home? No, it's not time for you to go home. So that's what I've noticed, and it's a little difficult because, again, I feel like Americans were a little bit more outspoken. So things like, hey, it's been 8-9 hours. I'm not giving you any more of my time, But here, since maybe they're so used to it, they're like, okay, yeah, you're gonna give us more of your time. There's nothing you can do about it. But if you speak out, okay, you're gonna get fired.
Yeah, I've heard this as well. So growing up in LA, San Jose, and you were surrounded by a lot of tough people, it sounds like. What was it like then transitioning into being a performing artist? Was that kind of like people taken aback by that? How did that go?
It is actually very difficult for me. You know what they say? There's like you can take the hood out of a person, but it doesn't mean like it always leaves, right? Sometimes I find that fierceness, is still there, right? Because sometimes when you start a new industry, especially performing arts, right, you always have to be very smooth, like very, yeah, I'm down for anything, sure, right? But as you get older and as you go through your things and things that you don't like to do, you're like, nah, I'm not about that.
I'd love to hear the hood Devin come out and just be like angry, yelling at someone, and
No, I'm not at that level. I think as I get older, I've calmed down a lot, right? But there are a lot of like jobs, right, in LA when I first started, whether I did like a music video and they're like, hey, can you do that move again? And it's a very like difficult move. But let's say they forgot to do this or they forgot to press record and all that stuff. But then like my
it's
neck,
not just me that does that then.
yeah,
I've done that before.
it's front and back, right?
Is it?
So
Okay, that
all
makes me
that,
feel better.
right? But
We
then
did press record, right? Okay, yeah, we're okay. Okay. Whew.
yeah, so like things like that happen, and then you're forced to do this really hard, difficult move again and again to the point where your body breaks down. And then some people are like, yeah, I'm down, I'll keep doing it. But for me, it's like, no, I'm not doing that again. And then they were like, hey, you're really hard to work with, right? So you get put into those like compromise situations where they put you in a box like that guy is too hard to work with. He's too entitled. He's too egotistical, you know? And there was a time where I did a film. It was like more of a, I guess, a closeted coming out kind of film for LGBT kind of stuff. And, I was performing, and then the director wanted to change the scene into a full on, like, make out, rougher scene. And in my contract, there was nothing like that. It was like, okay, it was maybe just a small little intimate peck, right? And it didn't move the story. So I questioned that. He was like, no, 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 we're just going to change it. It's going to be fine, and all that stuff like that. And I was like, no, I'm not comfortable with that, right? And then he was like, well, you're never going to work here again. Yeah. And he was threatening me. He was saying, like, you think you're all this, and was like gaslighting me and saying so many things. And I almost caved, right? Because I was like thinking to myself, I was like, oh my God, am I really being difficult? Or a part of my soul was like, no. Like, if you do this, it goes against who you are. And then my hip hop side, my upbringing is like, no, no, no. No amount of fame, money, or work is enough to make me lose that part of me. So I told him off. I was like, no, I don't care. Or we were like 2 months into shooting this short film, and I was like, no, cancel everything. I'll send you your money back, sue me, whatever, and never saw him again.
And what was the final outcome? You left the project?
I just left the project, yeah.
Did you have to pay them back?
Yes.
Oh, shit. Yeah, I know.
It was a portion, but like my agent understood,
Yeah, yeah. And then was it quite egregious for a director to do something like that?
I can't say that all directors do that. I guess because like in art, right? Like when you see something, you're like, okay, this might be a pivotal point in something. Because you've seen like performances where people push each other, right? To give that really good performance. And sometimes it's not very nice, but like the product that comes out is amazing, right? Then you realize the process that came to that, right? So maybe that was that. But to me, it didn't speak to me. It's one thing to push me to be the best performer, but it's one thing to add a certain like appeal to it that would put me in a negative light. And I didn't want that, even as a dancer too. Like a lot of us we come from this background, and when we dance and we put our heart out into it, we want to make sure we put our best, right? But if it's not our best and we lose or whatever it is, and we didn't do everything that we practice, it makes us feel really empty, So yeah, I don't know if all directors or all art is like that, but that was my experience on that set. you know? I've had plenty of great experiences on other sets, but just that one really gave me a very bad vibe for a while. Actually, that made me stop acting for 3 years, and that's when I pivoted to design.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I have one last question about acting, which actually I'm really interested to hear your answer on this, because it's something I've heard people talk about. I've seen the outcome, and even now it makes me cringe a little bit. Have you, as an Asian actor, been asked to do an accent or a voice that you're uncomfortable with? Because my frame of reference is there's a Indian Scottish actor in Scotland, and he's fantastic. But what made him famous, he was like the shopkeeper in this, not sitcom, but sitcom for want of a better word, comedy show. And he had to put on this Indian voice, right? And I've seen it before. I've heard that Aziz Ansari talk about it. And then even just yesterday, I saw this really funny meme, and I can't remember the Indian actors' names, but it's 3 Indian actors. And one of them is like, I hate it when I get confused for this other guy. And then that other guy commented like, no, I get confused for you all the time. It's amazing. I got this role because they thought I was you. And then this other guy was like, wait, it happens to you too as well. It happens to me. And it's like the 3 of them. And then it finishes, I think, with Sarah Silverman going, I didn't realize you guys were all the same person, or something like this. But it makes me cringe when I do see, I know, I'm like, you're doing the voice. There was a show, what was the show I just saw recently? And we're in 2025. I thought that had stopped. And I saw this actor, and I think he might have been Indian American, and they had him doing the voice, the accent. And I'm like, can he just use his own voice? Have you had that experience?
I haven't done any like voiceover stuff, but I have done auditions, for being other Asians for sure. So I definitely had to do, the Korean, ooh, and then the Japanese and stuff like that. But like, that's it. And with Vietnamese, it was much easier. But they always kind of like confuse it with the Chinese, Like, can you do the Chinese accent? I was like, wait, can I do it? Would it be racist? I guess I'm part, right?
Well, you talked about cultural appropriation earlier, so then are you now culturally appropriating another race by doing their voice? Because we were just talking last week, me and Tay, about Joe Coy. I don't know if you saw the Joe Coy bit when he does all the accents and he talks about Koreans sound like they're stoned, and then he does a Vietnamese accent, which Tay was like, it's so accurate. And Joe Coy is Filipino, and he does like a Filipino accent and things like this. The other thing that I think I wanted to ask you about is how many other races or countries do you get confused for? Because there's a really funny comedian here in Saigon called Matt Tran, and he's Vietnamese VQ. He's from California as well. And he does a joke about how he'll get confused for Mexican. He'll get confused. He's like, I could literally be any other race and they'll think that that's me. Do you get that as well?
Yes, actually. Well, I also know Matt Tran. He's a friend of mine when I first moved here. Him and his wife, Annie. So shout out to them. But yes, I get confused all the time. So when I first got here, of course, they were like, oh, you're Vietnamese, but you're not fully Vietnamese. Then I got the Chinese, then the Korean, then the Filipino, and then Thai. Yeah. And then, depending if I like have full facial hair and I'm out in the sun, yeah, I get Mexican too.
Well, Matt's got a mustache,
Mexican,
right? So that's how
Cambodian. Yeah, all the Asians. Not Japanese. I think I have not got Japanese before. That's the only one I didn't get. Yeah.
And, in Scotland, we have people from all over the world as well. And there's nothing better. Sometimes you meet an Indian person and they have a stronger Glaswegian accent than mine. There's a guy I know in New Zealand, Sean, and his family's from Mauritius. So very dark skin. And his Glaswegian accent is thicker than mine. And I'd love to see the same thing. Like, where are you from? So I'm from Glasgow. The person's, I've never seen that happen, but the person's brain would probably be like, wait, what? I don't understand this. And then I have to tell this story because I actually meant to message my friend this the other day because I tell this story quite often. There's a good friend of mine that I just messaged the other day, first time in a couple of years, Mary Young. And first time I ever met her. She denies that this ever happened. But Mary, this happened. I remember it. The first time I met her, I just said, where are you from? Literally just, where are you from? That nothing else meant, like, England, America, Australia, I've never met you before, where are you from? She's like, what do you mean by that? And I was like, no, I just, like, where you answer that any way you want. Where are you from? She's like, I'm from Manchester. Because she's from England. I was like, all right, well, cool. You're from Manchester. And we're good friends, but she claims that that never happened. But I vaguely, not vaguely, I vividly remember that interaction when we first met.
I see. I mean, yeah, sometimes like when I get this miscultured or like whatever you want to call that, into other Asians, I'm just like, why would you think that, right? Why would you think I look Cambodian or why would you think I look Thai? But then I think about it, it's like, why do I even feel that way? You know? Like, it's okay. Like, if you think I look like another Asian, I think that's nice. I think all Asians are beautiful, nice, and it's a cultural pride thing, right? But before, yeah, I used to be like, yeah, why do you think I look this? Because I'm dark or because I have smaller eyes? You know, like all those little things. But now I'm just like, hey, that's cool. I never got that before. Yeah, Japanese people are super beautiful. Koreans are super beautiful. Thai people are super beautiful. Yeah.
What is your reaction when someone says something along the lines of, but where are you from? Or where are you really from?
That used to trigger me a lot.
I'll bet, yeah. My wife is Mexican American, and you know I've lots of friends from all over the world. I've heard it being asked, and even, do you know what? I've actually cringed. Last week I was at a networking event, and I said to this guy, "Where are you originally from?" I literally meant, again, same thing. Where in the world? Because I hadn't spoken to him. I meant, are you from America? Are you from Australia, the UK? That's what I meant. Where are you originally from? And he went, well, I'm originally, like, my family are from China, but I'm American. And I cringed inside. I didn't correct myself, but I was like, shit, I worded that wrong. I didn't mean, like, where are you originally from? I meant where you're originally from in the whole wide world, you know? So, but what, yeah, so it originally triggered you. How did you react? How do you react now? What do you say to that?
So let me give you some backstory, right? So I know we talked about how I was born here, went over there, right? And went through all those struggles. So honestly, Vietnamese people over there, I've never had a good experience with them. Yeah. So that's why it made me push my Vietnamese roots away.
Interesting.
Very long. Yeah. So I grew up more like Mexican, more like African, black, culture. They were the ones that loved me the most. Even though my first experience, the good Asian experience, like with friends and stuff, are usually Koreans, right? So I never talked about that. And then when people were like, "Yeah, where are you from?" Right? Like, "Oh yeah, I'm from here, America, I'm in California." And they're like, "No, where are you really, really from?" And I think back to Vietnam, and I never wanted to say anything about it because one, I don't remember, right? So I can't even relate too much.
You're like, I'm from America. Like,
Yeah,
that's where I'm
yeah, yeah.
from.
And then my parents, they would tell me all these things about Vietnam that made me feel like, yeah, I don't even want to talk about that. And I don't know what it means to be Vietnamese besides the food, right? Like, oh, I eat the food, but I don't know what it means to be Vietnamese. Yeah, so for a while I was like, no, I'm Vietnamese, but I'm from America. Until I moved here, right? And that's when I had to learn the language again, how to say this, different versions from the north, the south, the east, the west, right? And then the culture, the difference in culture. So now, when people ask me, where are you from? I said, yeah, I'm from Vietnam. Because now I have a lot of pride, right? And it's not just pride that's just the flat, because obviously, well, we're not going to talk about that, but there's a lot of different opinions, about Vietnam. But then that's so long ago. And there's a lot of pain there as well. But I think now it's 2025, right? Let's move past all that. Whatever Vietnam is before, that's before. What Vietnam is now. So I'm very proud to say that I'm Vietnamese and this is where I'm from. I'm from Vietnam.
It's a really amazing transition to go from that. That's quite inspiring. So what made you then make that ultimate decision? You're like, I'm leaving the US, I'm going back to Vietnam. And the question I've asked this to a lot of VQs like yourself is, what was your parents' reaction?
It was very difficult. Well, I was working at a very big tech company. I was working along like 60, 70 hours a week. Then I got really sick. And, after that, lost my job, all that stuff like that. And was lost, And then a friend was like, hey, you should come to Vietnam. And this is the first time that I've heard about Vietnam in like 15, 20 years.
Had you ever been back before?
I've been when I was younger, like maybe like 5 years old, just to see what it was like and maybe like a quick transfer back in there, but nothing like, oh, a month or two just to see what it is. And obviously it's changed so much, right? But yeah, so a friend of mine asked me to judge a dance competition here. And I was like, okay, I love dance. But even though dance was so far from me during that time, right? It's just like, I didn't want to do anything, but I'll come anyway. I'll come. So I came when I judged the competition. I was like, oh my God, this is Saigon. This is kind of where I was born, right? And I saw the changes, the people, and then everything like that. And I still wasn't really adapting. The food, the language, the heat, the pollution, things like that. And it was hard for me to be like, all right, maybe I'll just go to Korea now, or I'll go to Bali or go somewhere else. Then I went to this event that connected a lot of VQs. And then they were talking to me, and I found so many people are like me, that they're from all over places: Germany, Australia, France, America. And they all came here. And they're all like, yeah, like it's weird, but we feel a connection here. And we just decided to stay. And maybe you too, right? And after they said that, I was like, okay, maybe I'll give it a month. 1 month became 3 months. 3 months became a year. And now I'm here.
So it happens to everybody. I mean, even the amount of expats, non-Asian culture, like VQs that I know that came here, similar story to me, came for a week, a month, a year, whatever. 10 years later, suddenly they're still here. It's incredible. And the question, what was your parents' reaction?
Right. So in the beginning, I was telling my mom that I was like, oh, hey, I'm just going to go for vacation. And of course, she didn't have anything good to say. She's like, be careful. Don't put your phone out there. They're going to steal it, and be careful. They might kidnap you, or they might do all these things to you, right? Because yada, 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 yada. And my father, the same thing, was like, don't trust people from the South. Don't trust people from this place, right? So it made me really anxious, right? Because I was like, oh God, is it going to be one of those? And I've traveled a lot. I've been to 15, 20 countries. I was like, solo traveling, it's fine. But why does going back to Vietnam make me so anxious? I didn't know what that was feeling. But of course, maybe because they were scaring me and obviously their history, their trauma as well. But when I got here, I was like, none of that was true.
The phone thing's kind of true. The kidnapping, I don't think so much.
Yeah, all that stuff. But I get it, right? They think when you first come here, you're a VQ or you have money or you do this. And, everyone's trying to make an extra buck. It's also everywhere, like even Korea, like China. If you travel, people do that, right? But when I got here, all they were was just welcoming. Even when I was at the immigration, they were like, oh, first time back? And I was like, yeah. He was like, welcome home, brother. And I was like, dang. But back to what you're saying is, I told my mother, I was like, Mom, it's been 6 months since I've been in Vietnam. It's a beautiful place. It's also healed me a lot, I've become less angry. I've become more centered, and I've learned to relax a little more. And I think I'm going to make Vietnam my home. And she just said, okay. Do your best there and I'll come visit you. And I think that was the moment I knew, this place is going to be my home.
You see yourself here for the foreseeable future?
Yes. I love Asia, I can't say Saigon is going to be my forever home. I'm kind of more of an introvert, so I like it a little bit more quiet. And you already know, motorbikes in the morning. And
Saigon is not an introverted city. If you described it, it's not an introverted city.
And the whole bánh bao đây, bánh bao nóng hổi đây. I'm waking up, I'm hearing that, I'm like, okay, damn. But it's cool though, because sometimes you don't need all the quiet, right? You also need the rustling to make you feel alive. Like you're in a city, you're hustling, and with everyone else also hustling, and the passion, the creativity of the city really drives everyone forward. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And maybe that's something I also need to get out of my comfort zone to be as well, right? Because when I was in the West, I kind of had it comfortable. My home, my place, my relationship during that time, and I was a little bit lost. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm still a little bit lost, but I'm not alone, right? I feel like everyone's a little bit lost. But we're also lost in this city trying to all figure it out too.
The best description that I'd ever heard of Saigon is it's like a big college town when you first come here, because you make friends with all these people for the first time. No matter what age you are, it's like when you go to uni, college for the first time and you're having a wild time, going out drinking, having fun. And that's what it was definitely like for me in the first year or two. And I've been here for 9 years, and eventually you're kind of like, okay, I live here now. I need to eat healthily, not go out so much, have more of a stable life. I'm going to use the word normal, but I know it's different for everybody. But try and have more of a normal life to what I used to have, rather than have this college experience, which I was like, I've definitely been living that for the first couple of years. And going back to the noise and the bops out, and all of this, you're maybe experiencing, you've been here a couple of years, so you're maybe experiencing something similar to what we experienced. So the first couple of years we lived in D4 and loved that experience, right? But we were woken up at 6 a.m. every morning by the school across the road doing the morning exercises. It's how I learned how to count to 10, because I could hear the teacher going, mop, hi, ba, bo, nam, mop, ha. They're all doing the jumping. Then at 10 a.m., mobile phone would open downstairs and they'd be blasting a speaker with a new promotion. Then, we get waking up at 3 in the morning with a funeral procession going down the road. We had no idea what the hell was going on. Why is there music at 3 in the morning? And then there's karaoke at night. And so there's just all this noise and craziness. And I do value quietness. Like, I'm from the suburbs of Glasgow. It's like as quiet as possible at night. I'll value that a lot. So for me, that was really difficult. We now live in a big high-rise building, but it's still 95% Vietnamese people. But there's no karaoke. It's quiet. It's nice, and we value that. And I think you can find that in Saigon. I think maybe you're still in that beginning bit where you're like, you live in Bintan, right, which is dense, packed, busy, that noise in the morning, noise in the afternoon, noise in the evening. And then you can find that quietness where you can kind of breathe a little bit. But one of the things that makes me laugh is when I often see, I haven't read it for a long time, but I'll often see expats post. I don't know if you've seen this in the various expat groups, like, I want the authentic Vietnam experience. Why would you live in Tao Dien, or why would you live in wherever? Like, you come to Vietnam. And I'm like, well, fucking, you enjoy the authentic Vietnam experience, because there's a lot of Vietnamese people I know do not like the authentic Vietnam experience either, which is 6 a.m. Exercise shouting. It's the noise all day. Like, that's fine. If you want that quote unquote authentic Vietnam experience, you go for it. I live the authentic Vietnam experience every day, and I also live in a nice, quiet neighborhood.
I love to add to that because, like, when I first got here, right, I was missing home, right? So I was like, oh my God, I miss the open streets, the Western architecture. So I stayed in, like, Tao Dien, right, Mastery for a month or two.
Me too, yeah.
Yeah. And it was fun, But then after a while, I was like, I didn't come here to do that,
You wanted the authentic.
I wanted the authentic. I wanted to have, like, a cafe soda, like,
You didn't want to
on the
sleep
red
ever
street.
again. You're
Yeah,
like, you're going to be away.
I wanted to be around. I want to hang out with my people. I didn't come here to hang out with expats and other VQs all the time. Sure, it's easy to learn to speak English again and making sure it's still there. But that longing of being Vietnamese, it can't just be connected through other people who are also longing for that. It has to be with people that already have that, right? Which are Vietnamese people who have lived here, who have went through what they went through all the way up till this day to learn about that, right? Even actors, right? We do a lot of research about which role, if this person has this disorder, all that stuff like that, right? And for me, I always loved that, about learning new cultures, and not just by being a tourist, right? But by being a traveler, or being by someone who resides in a place that you know nothing of, to learn from people who look like you, but have experienced something totally different. But one thing I wanted to add too, yeah, of course, like I moved so many places. I've been to D4, D3, D2, now I'm in Bintan, right? First year, of course, had my fun, right? With a lot of people who come and go so much. But Now I'm like, hey, like I'm kind of done, you know? I want to really solidify my career, my life here. And a lot of my friends now, I've really appreciate them. And I've learned a lot of things, in the last year. Because, in a city like this, it's really easy to find someone to drink with. You can just go out on the street and just cheers anyone to drink with you. But how many people can have tea with you? How many people will wake up early to have coffee with you? How many people would actually sit there and help you and talk to you, I think that's important.
A question I really want to know the answer to is something you just mentioned about you didn't want to just meet, I'm paraphrasing here, but meet other VQs, right? You mentioned it was easy to meet other people like that and you wanted to have the real experience or meet local people. But what is the VQ community like in Saigon? Because I know there's overseas Vietnamese groups and I've been to an overseas Vietnamese lunch. I was the token white guy because Annie Vlau invited me and it was amazing. And I know because obviously through this podcast, I interview and talk to so many people from all over the world. I find it fascinating. Germany, Hungary, the UK, the US, Australia, all with very similar stories, but all individual as well. Do you guys gravitate towards each other? Do you learn from each other? Or are you like Mercury and you repel each other? Because I know the Irish, they can love hanging out together. That's why we have Irish bars, right? The Irish, no matter where I've been all over the world, the Irish find each other and they're best friends. I have barely any Scottish friends, and it's not on purpose, but I think it must be subconscious that I don't seek out Scottish people. There's no Scottish bars, right? It's not like all the Scottish people get together, like, you're from Scotland, I'm from Scotland, let's hang out. Where does the VQ community fit within that kind of timeline, or not timeline, whatever you want to call that?
Yeah. Well, definitely, OV Vietnamese is really good. Shout out to Quang, Annie, Lam, right? There's also another group called Saigon VQ. Shout out to John and Vince, And that was the first group that I came and got to connect with, right? And they're all amazing. They all help people like me who've come back to really connect with other people, with friends, and if you're looking for a job or connections or even learning about history, right? Like those groups are amazing, But I think it's hard because sometimes those groups, people come and go so quickly. So it depends on how you feel, right? Like for me, I think what I learned about myself is that I build connections so fast, so strong, so intimately, that when the people leave, it hurts. So I tend to not want to connect with more VQs because I don't know people are going to live here, or they're just going to be a one-time fun thing. And at my age, at my time now, I've also learned my lesson that I don't want to just have quick fun, right? And sometimes for us too, right? Like trauma brings us closer together, that longing, that connection. So a lot of us VQs who are coming back here, we all have that. We all want to connect. We all want to talk about all this. But of course, what I was telling earlier is we're not really Vietnamese. We're still VQ, right? We have the face, but our culture is European, American, Australian, whatever you're at. So we can't really connect very well still. So we tend to connect with other people who understand that, right? But also, we also carry our own traumas, our own issues, our own values, and our own boundaries too. So sometimes we might not be so close, or we might not be so loving, but I think we all respect each other. We all are supporting each other's journey, and I think that's important. But that's just for my own journey. I think a lot of other people who go to these groups find a lot of value. And I did as well. Like in the first year, I met so many good people, so many friends. But obviously, meeting so many, you don't know how many are actually your friends or not. Like that's why the analogy of going back to having tea and coffee, like how many can do that versus how many can just come and have a drink. Oh my God, you're Vietnamese and you're VQ, right? Like it should be more than that. So this year for me, I literally tried to get past that and be like, do we actually have a connection? And it has to be more than just being Vietnamese, That's why I kind of gravitate more to people who are from here, Vietnamese people, than VQs. I have a lot of VQ friends already, and they're all amazing people. But now that I realize after the drinks are put down and we're all maybe sober, right? How many of us are actually going the same way? And it doesn't mean we're not supporting each other, going that direction. But it's just that, oh, okay, cool. Now I have to find my way of living here, and whatever my way is will lead me to the people that I should be connecting with, right?
We touched on something that is quite personal to me and to many other people as well, but quite personal to me. Something as somebody who's an expat, not in Vietnam. I'm an expat. I left Scotland 20 years ago, over 20 years ago. I've lived in America, Australia, New Zealand, and now Vietnam. So I've lived all over the world. And one thing that's really difficult is to make long-term friends, like you mentioned, because people come and go. And I've had that throughout my whole life. And I remember even when I lived in Australia, I had a really good friend there. And my friend from back home was visiting. I've still got a couple of friends I'm still close to from back home, from like growing up with. But one of them at the time was visiting me in Australia. And then this guy, Tom from Finland, was heading back to Finland, I think, or wherever. We had a good night out. And I was like, all right, cool, mate. Take it easy. See you later. Have a good night. And he walked off. And my best friend from Scotland who was visiting said, he's leaving, right? Like, you might never see him again. And I was like, yeah, no, maybe not. I don't know. And he's like, was that not like weird? And I was like, yeah, it's pretty weird, but you just get used to it. You've been living away for so long, like people come and go, and it's not like a big heartfelt. In the beginning, when you're younger, it's like, oh my God, I'm never going to see you again. But it's just the way it goes. And, sure enough, about 10 years later, I saw him again for a very brief time, but it was amazing. We picked up exactly from where we left off. I've got good friends still in America that if I haven't seen them for probably 15, 20 years. If I saw them tomorrow, it would be exactly like the day I left. But it's difficult being here in Saigon, specifically as well. When we first came here, we didn't expect to be here for so long. We knew people, they were like, I won't go to somebody's leaving party unless they've been here for more than 2 years, because there's so many people that come and go, and they everyone's having a leaving party, but they've barely been here. And it is difficult. We've had friends come and go. Luckily have really good friends, Lewis and Kim, who live here and been here forever. But it does make you wary about being friendly with people. And we've even just made plans to go out for dinner this week on Friday. I'm really, really excited. We met him on the weekend. We haven't met his wife. Really, really nice guy. But he works for the American Embassy, and he literally has a 2-year placement here. And immediately as I was talking to him, I was like, I really like this guy, but I know he's leaving in 2 years. It makes it difficult. Like, we might become friends for life, right? I don't know. We're just going out for dinner. Don't want to put pressure on the dinner. But it does immediately in my head, I'm like, he's leaving. And so it makes it really hard to be like, but that's just the part of being an expat.
Yeah. Again, I think for me, I went through a lot of friends, up and down, so many, especially as a dancer and as a performing artist in LA, right? And I was like, oh my God, I made so many great connections with these people, and then now I barely talk to them. And when I came here, I made so many good friends, and we had such a strong connection, especially being Vietnamese and coming back here, working together, and let's have each other's back. And, even last year, it just all went away. Some on other people's parts and some on my part, right? But I realized that's just life, right? And you shouldn't add so many expectations or a lifespan on something. And in Vietnamese, we have this word, we call it Yuing, right? It's kind of like fate, destiny, serendipity, right? And it means like you're supposed to meet someone, or you have a charisma or connection towards this person, right? But it doesn't mean it lasts forever, right? So another word called Het Yuing, which means it's done, like no more destiny or fate, which means it's like, oh, maybe you just have this lifespan togetherness, right? And that should be okay too, because I also believe that people come into your life to teach you something, to help you get over something, to help maybe push you towards something, but they're not meant to go with you all the way. At least for me, if I keep going through life thinking that, oh my God, this person's so nice to me, and I want to keep them, and it's cool if they also want to be a part of your lives. That's beautiful, right? But if you also always want, like, okay, if you're going to be my friend, you have to be here. You got to do this. You have to make sure you're here for like 5 years. Then we'll be friends. But life is not black and white like that, right? And you should just let whatever the world give you what it needs to give you. Like maybe for us too, right? This could be our last podcast together, or it could be the first of 1,000. But let's not even look at that. Let's just see where it goes, and let's just enjoy the present.
I think that's a perfect time to finish. Devin, thank you so much. This has been amazing. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it so much. And don't forget, rate, review, subscribe, share this podcast with someone else who wants to discover more about Vietnam as well. It will really help this podcast grow. So thank you very much for tuning in, And Devin, thank you so much for being part of this episode of Discover Vietnam.
Thank you. The honor's mine.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Whether it's your first cleaning or you're finally sorting that long overdue crown, Premier Dental is where you should go for dental care done right. Family founded, ethically run, internationally trained. Premier Dental has been trusted by generations since 1999, including me and Adri. Learn more at premierdental.vn and make sure to tell them when you go that you heard it here at a Vietnam podcast from me, Neil Mackay. Cheers.